Good afternoon, folks. Everyone is out here on this nice day for a change. We're out here last night. It's like night and day. Freezing. Without a t-shirt. Either we're out here, we're at right by the grassy knoll where history was made almost 50 years ago, where a president essentially gave his life for his country. If you look at it that way, he was assassinated, but he gave his life in service to his country, just like any military person would give their life in service to their country. So, in a way, in a very direct way, I'm thankful to President Kennedy that we're able to even stand up here on this box today and speak aloud on the public square because of the sacrifices that were made by public servants like that. You know, you can't walk around this area and think about what happened here without thinking about death. You know, President Kennedy died, was shot, and eventually succumbed to his injury right down there. The gentleman that shot him up in that building, 3 days later, he was shot and killed.
Did you get one of these? Thank you.
You know, you walk through here and just the idea of death enters your mind.
Did you get one of these?
And even when we're not here around where these things happen, we still think about it if we're honest with ourselves about death. You know, we should look at each breath as a gift, you know. No one's promised tomorrow. We know people who were here today, I heard the saying, here today, gone tomorrow. We know people who were here today, the next day they were gone. So it's naturally to think about what happened when someone died. What happened? What happened to President Kennedy? What happened to Lee Harvey Oswald? What happened to Jack Ruby? He's dead too. Sooner or later, we're going to have to ask ourselves, what will happen to me when I die? Because one of these days, no matter where you're at in your life, your circumstances are going to change. Okay, if I walked up to you with a jar of diamonds and a jar of water, I said, which one of these would you like? You'd probably say, well, I'll take the jar of diamonds. Okay, but I left out one important point of the story. You've been walking through the Sahara Desert for 3 days. Your mouth is dry as a bone. Your lips are cracked and bleeding. Your tongue is swollen. You would almost give anything for just a little bit of water. In that case, you would toss aside the jar of diamonds and take the water. So see, what's the difference? The difference is the circumstances have changed. So one of these, now we're enjoying life, we're enjoying each other, we're enjoying our family, we're enjoying good food, good company. But one of these days your circumstances will change. And there are several schools of thought of what happens after we die. Some people think, well, you just become worm food. Other people think, well, I'll come back as a cockroach, or I'll come back as somebody else, or I'll come back as some other animal, something like that. And keep going over and over and over again, so life is just an eternal do-over of various lives. And then there's some people who will acknowledge that there is a heaven and hell. The most common answer I get about heaven and hell here in the Bible Belt is good people go to heaven, bad people go to hell. And I'd like to tell you, that is not true. Okay? Bad people do go to hell. But let me tell you something. Bad people go to heaven too. What's the difference? The difference is, did those bad people who didn't go to hell had a payment? Because one of these days, you may not think you will need it, but one of these days you will need a payment. You will need a substitute. Say, I don't understand. What do you mean? Okay? First of all, the most important question, is there a God? If you've already reconciled that and thought that there is a God, the next obvious the question to ask is, what does he expect of me? And an easy answer to the question, what does God expect of me, is look at the Ten Commandments. We're all familiar with the Ten Commandments. Look at the Ten. That is what God expects of you. God expects perfect obedience to the Ten Commandments in thought, in word, and in deed. So already you're thinking, I'm already in trouble. let's just go through, let's just tackle one of the commandments. Okay, the commandment is, you shall not bear false witness. In other words, you shall not lie. How many lies have you told in your life? You say, well, probably if you're like me, probably too many to count. So already in the book of Revelation it says all liars will share their part in the lake of fire. All liars will share their part in hell. If you told one lie, that would make you a liar. You know, it only takes one murder to make you a murderer. It only takes one stealing one thing to make you a thief, and it only takes one lie to make you a liar. So now the Bible says all liars will have their part in the lake of fire. So one lie is enough to send you to hell. That's just one commandment. There are many others. The third commandment is you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Have we ever used God's name flippantly as a curse word to express our disgust at something? God calls that blasphemy. And it's clear that he will not hold him guiltless who takes my name in vain. So now we're at the two commandments. Have you ever blasphemed the name of the Lord? And there's a seventh commandment. You shall not commit adultery. Many people would probably say, I think I'm good on that one. Because adultery is like when you mess around with someone else's husband or wife, right? I haven't done that. Well, that's good if you haven't done that. But here's something to consider. Jesus said in Matthew 5, he said, I heard it said to those of old, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you, if you look at a woman to lust after her, you've committed adultery with her already in your heart. So the real question is, have you lusted? Because lust is violation of the seventh commandment. So really, we stand before God condemned. One lie would do it, but we have gone even above and beyond even one lie. I'm sure many of us have lied many times, have stolen, have blasphemed, have lusted. See, God, the Bible calls that storing up wrath. We're storing up wrath for ourselves. So when that day does come, when we exit out of this life and enter into the next, we have a huge storage. We have a huge debt that is built up that has to be paid. So that's what I asked you before. Do you have a payment? Some people think, well, I will die and I'll stand before God and I'll plead my case then. I'll try to make my case then when I'm standing before God. You know, there's a saying among law enforcement and among lawyers that said the person that represents himself has a fool for a client. That means if somebody has multiple charges against them and they go into court, they want to represent themselves. They want to be their own lawyer. They want to be their own advocate. The saying is this person has a fool for a client. In other words, it's foolish to walk in there and try to plead your own case to the judge. And yet, we think we're going to die and stand before the God of the universe with our huge sin debt that we've racked up and try to plead our own case?